have one just technical one. The tree map, the statistical evaluation that you showed are done directly with the system. So you use.
Yeah, you can.
One could show that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You can do it on.
It's JIT.
It's a very simple Google chart API. Mm-hmm. So I'm working a lot with APIs, which are and most of the work here is was already done by others. Yeah, and I can if you use this source, for example, you have the various visualization methods here on the site, just to explore it a bit. It's still experimental. This one is from the weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and and we already invented these. So sometimes it takes a bit of time. Sometimes it does not work but we are still working on these things here. Mm-hmm.
What is the meaning of the colors in the tree map?
Which one?
The tree map visualization.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this one, but those that you showed.
The corpus tree map, you mean?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can find it.
The size was clear in the meaning, but the color of the...
Yeah, I will just look at here.
Yes.
Yeah. The color is just equivalent to the size.
Okay, so it's just to divide.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Would it be possible to make the search interface more easily accessible for people who don't know much Arabic or Greek, so that, for example, with the Seneca example, you have the translations in English on the Greek and the Arabic side?
That is planned for the future, for the future stages, let's say, of our project. Now we are working with Greek and Arabic text only, and with Greek and Arabic lexemes only, which is not so much user-friendly. It's right, because that is really an equivalent continuation of the printed version of the Greek and Arabic glossary, where there were some English commentaries and translations elaborated by the editors of the dictionary. The idea was that this terminology is not fully covered by the classical dictionary, so that one has to define the particular words himself. But now we are working, so we are thinking, let's say we are planning to integrate some classical dictionaries in some form. We don't know until now. How? In some form in our glossarium, it will be probably the dictionary of Lane for the Arabic language, and the lexicon of Little Scott for the Greek, so some mostly used editions of lexica as some background information for the words, but we are also thinking of integrating the translation, some fields of translation in the whole layout, but it is for the future. Now we have only Greek and Arabic, usually Greek and Arabic words, which for people, which could produce some difficulties for people. You're right.
How do you deal with the Arabic transformation of the writing system? So, for example, the vowelization, which you already mentioned, but in early times you didn't have the vowels, so the points for the vowels in Arabic. In early Arabic writing systems, and in modern Arabic writing systems, you have the vowels explicit.
if one wants to put them, one has them. But if you read some Arabic text now, you don't have them either. But sometimes it is important to put some vowels to distinguish between different Arabic forms, of course. And we are putting. We try to do that systematically, but probably it is not everywhere. And there we immediately face the problem of the search facilities, because the word with vowels should be found in any case, whether one tries to look after it with vowels or without vowels. And that was of course the great help of our colleague Torsten Roeder, who could associate. So the only way, as far as I understand, is to associate the words, the forms of the letters with vowels among themselves, so that you will have the letter one particular consonant with all the vowels associated with one another, so that through all the search facilities you find all these forms. And that is some preparatory work which must be done, and then you have to prove it. Or we are doing that all the time, and until now it functions. But it is one thing which has to be proven always through this association of different forms of the letters with vowel signs. And diacritics in Greek.
So you don't, just because I could have answered the question to myself, you look for the root, for the Arabic root, and not for the word for itself.
You could do that, yes. You can look also for the word, and there is an opportunity here to put. Okay, so yes, the word. Here we go. For example, let's see, the word which means the.
Kita.
Okay, I was by nafs.
Okay.
That is the. Just called the. Die Seele in German, the psyche in Greek. So you can look after that. Or you can put that just the root consonants and get the same results. So that is the idea. Maybe it doesn't function in the same way, but that is the idea that every word is associated, because if you click on any equivalence, then you get a small characterization of every word, that on the Greek side it is a part of speech, and on the Arabic side that is part of speech and root and stem. And through these fields one can make the search also just clicking sometimes on them. That I think here you see that we have the forms with diacritics, but here, for example, there is no diacritics. Anapneo, and here under the word is with diacritics. So here it functions both of the variants. You get both of the variants, though you have looked, in fact, on the after the word with diacritics. And as far as I know, the only method of that is to associate the different forms of the letters.
Mm-hmm. So still the problem of the collation tables, which don't work in our current MySQL version. Migrating would be possible, but that would depend from the academy. Yeah. Yeah. So this, I'm still thinking of a way around this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you faced the problem that you had to deal with letters that don't exist in the Unicode
Not so far.
range?
Not so far.
We dealt with the problem that of the letters, which when one has to look to try to find 1 day or 2 days, but after a pair of days, one finds them. Like for example, we had some problems with several letters which are used in Greek only for the numbers. They have some apostrophe or some line somewhere. So and but after a week of search, so one finds them somewhere.
Well, I know it from the Quran, but there we have some special letters that don't exist in the Unicode. Sheets.
The texts which we have, they are usually printed texts, and they yes, for example, this letter.
Yeah, this one here.
Yes.
Yeah, this,
we had to introduce
later.
extra in this keyboard, but fortunately, until now we have all the letters, but not all of them are present everywhere, but one finds them.
So, what was your rationale for not having a sanity check on the range of characters in your database?
It was on the first. Yeah, it was a question of time to implement it, of course. Yeah, and so far the data is just is quite clear of these. So we can do regular checks on this, and it is possible that, for example, in the Graeco-Arabic sections there are sometimes Latin letters. Yeah, and in that case, yeah, we can
as commentaries
can just wipe out them manually. Yeah, but it's easy to find out where. Yeah.
And you were describing that this wave of translation somehow helped create the vocabulary, the scientific vocabulary in Arabic. Is it somehow possible to see in your user interface how, for example, the translations for specific Greek nouns, I think nouns should be the easiest, somehow converged over time to one or more than one Arabic counterpart, or so?
As it is a database and not a lexicon, so one gets the results from different texts, from different examples of translation techniques and so on, which one could comment and analyze in different ways, of course. So we don't get the ready results of chronology, of particular preferences and translations, but so far as we have this database, we have the possibility to search in different directions. For example, if we get some particular noun in Greek, then we get some information of their translation. Yes, from is okay. Okay. A very common pronoun, that one, let's say, toyutos, which if you click on it, you have 185 search results, or you put this toyutos at the first page, just here under Greek lexeme, and get the same results. And here you have information from different sources. So that is already the next step in your research. As you have some background information who was the translator, or when the translation possibly took place. For example, of the Aristotelian logical texts, in what background of these translations we have, or Tactica of Aelian, or maybe some other texts like Proclus, for example, which was translated very paraphrastically and very freely, corresponding some needs of the community who translated these texts. So we could, from the background of these translation activities, we can analyze the results which we get. But the results of our database are the purely materials, and that is our aim of our work, to produce the materials for further philological analysis. Probably that will further develop in this direction.
Can just show the new function which leads into the direction of a dictionary. So, for example, if you are asking about a specific noun, you could just use this new option. I mean, it looks not very nicely structured, but you could, for example, if we knew the dates of the translation, you could also order this in another way and get a bit of translation history and transformation of how specific nouns are translated into other nouns or into other forms. Is that the direction you were asking? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what we do not have at this point is the historical dimension. So we have no.
There is no chronology basically in the results, but that is a very important distinction that we make. That we produce the results which could be further analyzed, like for example, we have colleagues in Würzburg who are working with the Arabic Latin, the Latin translation from the Arabic in the Middle Ages, and they divide the results which one gets according to several epochs of translations and regions, Spain, Italy, and so on. One gets a more detailed overview of the results. This is a corpus-based database which produces results that need further analysis and could be used in either direction. And that is the strategy of the Glossarium, that doesn't give answers, it gives materials.
Do you include the names of the translators if they are known?
Sometimes when they could be quite surely defined. For example, we know that categories were translated by Hunayn. We know that, but there are examples where one supposes that according to some theories that some works were translated by some particular translators, but then we are more cautious.
Sorry if I missed it, but how did you get the file cards into the computer?
Scanning?
And they were handwritten, right?
Yes, that's the prehistory of our project. I think the starting point of this project, when I was not even born, was in 60s, as far as I know, when the first ideas of collecting the materials of the existing glossaries. That was the idea of two researchers, Gerhard Endres and Dimitri Gutes, So they started to put the glossaries together. And this information was produced in form of the one could not see that very well, but this is a file card which was intended to be machinery analyzed. There were in the 70s, 80s, there was an opportunity to analyze information from the file card, from this written file card, if they were written properly, and they were written properly, these file cards. I'm very impressed by the work which was done. That are really about 70,000 of file cards written by different people in different times and epochs, and because of that, maybe it was one of the reasons why, yes, for example, that is quite another way of writing a file card. So we decided to scan them, not to lose this connection of epochs between the further earlier stage of the project and the now stage, because it has also the minuses, let's say, in this strategy, because these file cards were to a large extent prepared on the basis of, yes, for example, here, sorry that I interrupt me, Kusta ibn Luca is noted as translator of Placeta Philosophorum, because one could believe Hans Deiber that he was the translator of this work. But it is not always the case when one could know that. Sorry, but I wanted just to put here that the editions of the works, they progressed, and nowadays in very many sources we have now in our work we include another newer editions of the Arabic works, but also sometimes of the Greek, even of the Greek sources, which at that time were not of the same quality as nowadays, and so we have to change our working strategy. Let's say the most maybe drastic example nowadays is the Nicomachean Ethics, which was at first edited by a very prominent Arabic scholar, Abdurrahman Badawi, on the basis of some manuscript, but with very many errors in the text. And then we get some. We've got some new edition of two colleagues, which was very criticized by another scholar, Manfred Ullmann, and so now we have quite a number of additions and corrections, and everything has to be checked in preparing of the text. If it were Placeta Philosophorum of the Aetius, then we have the edition of Deiber, which until now remains a perfect edition of the text which one could use and so on. But there are examples where we have to check the information for the whole source in quite a new way, and to correct our data in the database. But yeah. That's the state of the arts, of course.
You mentioned some colleagues in Würzburg who are working on a comparable
Professor
corpus.
Takhasse worked.
And there are lots of initiatives in the classical world regarding Greek lexicography. For example, there's a new website just released a few weeks ago, Logaion, so you can look up lots of Greek words. Lots of corpuses online regarding both Greek, Latin and Arabic texts. So my question here is, have you thought about ways in which you're not just producing a database that's very self-enclosed, but can link out to these other initiatives, because you can't do everything, and then there are other people working in this field who could perhaps have really interesting data that can enrich your own content.
Of course, we thought about that. the restrictions are usually the restrictions of those people who created another websites. If they are open for the dialogue, of course we think about collaborating with them, like Professor Doug Hasse, who is quite open of interlinking his database, and some initiatives here in Berlin, in the Tilota project and so on. But there are some databases who are just closed in their own rights and their own scientific interests and so on. But we are now working in this direction. We have also some future plans for continuing this initiative in a more broad context, and we are now in the state of collaborating in more intensive collaborating, let's say, with the Academy of Sciences, where our database could be included in more meta search database, where, for example, the Arabic, some Arabic terms could be checked both in the Quranic corpus, which is now prepared as a database, and in our database, and in some classical Arabic dictionaries, which are now online. Lane is nowadays common wealth, so to say, and so on. And the same is for the Greek. For the Greek, we are not so far, because we have to put some contacts with the Persoios. With the people who are working in Persoios. Maybe it could work with interlinking these sites also. But you are perfectly right that one has to interlink. One doesn't have to double the work, but it's of course quite obvious idea that like with the lexicons of the German language, if one has to look in some lexicons, there are already a lot of possibilities to do that in different sources, and that must be probably the same with the Arabic and Greek corpora, because one becomes this impression on what is original, in fact, in this terminology which do have. There was a question: what is the what was the impact of this translation movement? One can get this impact, one can get the idea of these translations only in comparison, of course, with the classical Arabic literature, and that one can do that only in comparison with other sites and integrated some search facilities. And so we hope that would work in this direction.
Any other questions before we move to the one? If not, let's thank our speakers again.